So the latest Nintendo Direct just gave us a brand new trailer for Kirby and the Forgotten Land, introducing brand new mechanics like Mouthful mode. Between the new trailer, tons of new screenshots, and the Japanese website going live, there's a lot of info to cover. So, you know what that means. It's time we power up the old analysis machine to see what secrets and hidden details we can find. If you haven't already checked out our previous analyses yet, make sure to do so, as we'll mostly be covering the new information, and also calling back to details covered in them as well. Starting off, the trailer opens up with an early game cutscene, potentially even from the first level, or one of them at least. Kirby enters one of the decrepit buildings, inhaling some of the fox enemies, and gets more than he bargained for, also inhaling the nearby car. Well, mostly, because rather than fully inhaling it, he sort of sits on top of it in his new Mouthful mode. But more on this when we see it in action. The first couple of gameplay clips are from the first level of Natural Plains, and also the tropical area, both in levels we've seen before in previous trailers. While the Natural Plains level is easier to identify, we can tell this is the same look at the tropical region as before, thanks to these objects in the background matching up. So, our first real point of interest is this shot in the wasteland. Ice Kirby dodges around these falling metal structures. There's some wind turbines on the far left, and up ahead we can make out the silhouettes of palm trees. On the right of the path, we can see what looks to be dried up coral, with ivy growing up this fencing just above. This lines up with our theory that the desert wasteland is indeed made up of both the dried up seas and the arid towns. Next up is a clip from the amusement park, which we can identify from the circus tents down below, roller coaster track over here, and general neon look to everything. These arrows seem to be the only accessible platforms, as the ground is covered in some sort of tar or goop, and since Kirby isn't in his water balloon form, he'll have to avoid it. There's also this spinning enemy following Kirby, which likely gives the tornado ability. The next clip of interest is also from the amusement park, and it's a closer look at the entrance area we've seen before. This time we get to see it in motion, with these various rides continuing on their tracks. The next clip brings us to the snowy region. Strong winds are forcing Kirby to the left. Like our other glimpses of the snowy region, this one also appears to be flooded. The slopes of these platforms feel more like rooftops. There's also these metal structures off to the left. There's not much else of note here, but it's neat to look at the states these different environments are left in. The next clip gives us another look at the Waddle Dees being captured in the opening cutscene, so we'll revisit this one later with other new clips, and try to piece together as much of the opening cutscene as we can. So, moving on, our next look at the gameplay brings us back to the amusement park, with Kirby and Elfilin riding in on a warp star. It seems to be the main entrance to the park, given the barriers for organized lines, and the main gates here. This is also likely the start of the level after selecting it on the map, since there doesn't appear to be anything Kirby can interact with before this point. Since this is the entrance to the park, perhaps it's actually the first level of the whole region. Anyway, we've actually seen this exact location before too, in the first trailer. Kirby leads some ducklings around, and we see these very same ducklings here in this trailer too. One over here on the right, and another up the stairs on the left. Up next is a shot of Kirby in the Natural Plains. There's some sort of poster on the wall here, and we can make out a purple UFO on it, but the rest isn't clear enough. Maybe it's an ad for the amusement park? Anyway, Kirby continues, and comes across a card that starts glowing. Naturally, this is because it could be used for Mouthful mode. We actually see what directly follows this clip from the Japanese website, with Car Mouth Kirby immediately driving off to the right, eventually coming to the exact location seen next in the trailer. While this mode can move quickly, it can also destroy objects. We see these metal boxes get destroyed, and see this big cracked wall up ahead on the path? There's a trapped Waddle Dee inside, as well as some other rewards. Clearly, Kirby can drive into this wall at full speed and break it down, or something along those lines. But what else can it do? Well, if you're playing in co-op, Dedede can sit on the back of Karby and throw his spears ahead. Unfortunately, this is the only Mouthful mode we see used in co-op, but perhaps the others get similar boosts. The next Mouthful mode we see is Vending Mouth, where Kirby swallows a whole vending machine, allowing him to attack by spitting juice cans. These cans have gotta be pretty strong if they're destroying metal boxes. This ability feels pretty familiar though. Refrigerator Kirby, anyone? Anyway, we can also see Vending Mouth Kirby taking out this garage door in the Natural Plains. This seems to be the same one on top of the building seen from the very first area in several trailers, near Kirby and Dedede in the co-op trailer too. Since this was previously established as one of the first levels of the game, the Vending Mouth is likely one of the first kinds that Kirby gets, after the car of course, since the cutscene tied to that one makes it pretty clear that it comes first. Next up is Cone Mouth, which allows Kirby to poke into cracks in the ground to open them up. He can wedge into water pipes to burst them open, creating geysers to open up new paths. He can also fight enemies like this, as we see this large turtle-like enemy using a building as its shell. There's a golden cage of Waddle Dees inside the building, and the notable weak spot up top here. Screenshots show that Kirby can wedge himself in here to defeat this enemy, completely destroying the building in the process too. And as it turns out, Kirby can get this ability in an area we saw in the last trailer, the cones just before the metal boxes and Sir Kibble. Moving on to the Scissor-Lift Mouth. This deposits Kirby at a higher location, and that's all we see it do, really. We can see from the visuals of the surrounding area that this is in the tropical world too. Notably, he still drilled Kirby. It seems that even when powered up with the copy ability, Kirby can still enter Mouthful mode. Once deposited up here, Kirby digs into the ground and pulls out one of the colorful shards we talked about in our previous analysis. But more on these later. For now, let's move on to the next Mouthful mode, Ring Mouth. Okay, can we please get a Ring-Con theme to Kirby? No? Alright, well, anyway, this lets Kirby waddle around and spit air out ahead of him. He could blow air at fans to make them spin, or sit on a boat and act as a sail. Hitting enemies with the boat will damage them too. This particular clip seems to be in World 2, the tropical area. The main question is, what can this boat do that Kirby can't? Well, maybe Kirby can't jump very high out of the water, so the boat will act as a nice extra platform to reach other islands. There's a screenshot that shows us a little more of this in action too, focusing on Kirby attacking an enemy with the boat. If we look in the background, we can see one of the Waddle Dee cages. Only, instead of a Waddle Dee, there's a red point star inside. Perhaps Kirby has already rescued this Waddle Dee, and if you replay levels, they get replaced by other rewards like point stars or food items. Next up is the Light Bulb Mouth, seen in the amusement park area, going off of the neon lights and designs everywhere. This bright idea can light up a dark room, illuminating a path for Kirby. Even if the lights are off, it still emits a dim light around Kirby, but turning it on lights up a much larger area. Beyond lighting up paths, there's also some solar machinery Kirby can interact with by shining the light on them. We mostly see it used to activate elevators and open up other paths, but could it be used for more? This is actually a pretty interesting mechanic, and I'm curious to see what else it gets used for. Moving on, next up is the Arc Mouth. This allows Kirby to fly through the air like a glider. He can fly through the rings for point stars, and change his size to affect his speed. He can also do a spin attack to take out nearby enemies. At first, we were wondering where this main clip takes place, but the Japanese website actually answers that for us. Remember last trailer when we saw Tornado Kirby working his way up to this rooftop garden with the nice benches and gate, but we couldn't see what was next? Well, that's because from this point, Kirby sets up the arch and takes off gliding. These sections look pretty fun. Notably, this almost looks like a transition between the natural plains and the coastal second world. So what if there were transition levels set between the two worlds to serve as a natural progression from one to the next? That would be pretty cool. Water Balloon Mouth is the next one shown off, with Kirby filling up from a pipe in the arid desert region, on some sort of rooftop. Dry plants and vines sit on the windowsills and out of pots, and there's several puddles of poison ahead, not to mention the cactus enemies and a large poisonous enemy. Kirby can spit water out to clean up the poison puddles, like something out of Super Mario Sunshine. Looks like we were right to make that reference in the last analysis. Anyway, it's not just against poison, as we can also see Kirby use this ability in the amusement park, cleaning up these dark puddles of black tar-like goop. And just like in Mario Sunshine, cleaning these up can affect the environment. Water isn't just for cleaning though, as we can see Kirby also uses this ability to water some flowers, rewarding him with a small pile of point stars. Moving on from the Mouthful mode, the next clip in the trailer shows Kirby rescuing a Waddle Dee in the coastal second world. This appears to be some sort of deserted island, and going off the amount of rewards here, it's likely a secret location. There's a pile of point stars, plenty of food items, and a fox enemy sleeping on this chair. Plus, there's an orange warp star back here, likely to bring Kirby back to the main path. Looks like the many Waddle Dees will be hidden in some secret areas too. Speaking of Waddle Dees, we get a lengthy segment on Waddle Dee Town next, so let's dive into it. It takes 60 Waddle Dees to get the restaurant built, and we can see from early on that it'll be the restaurant thanks to the maximum tomato sitting on a stool. We already know that we can play a minigame here, but that's not all. We can see from screenshots that we can order food from here as well. This Karby parfait costs 20 point stars, and it looks to be a tasty treat themed to the car mouth ability, even topped with whipped cream and a cherry. The Kirby burger costs the same, and will heal some health. Perhaps after ordering this, we get that short cutscene of our trio enjoying the burgers on the roof of the restaurant. Anyway, as we previously theorized, we can also order a drink for 50 point stars and a maximum tomato for 100. The post office just next door will only take 50 Waddle Dees comparatively. According to the Japanese website, It seems this will be used to give useful items for your adventure in exchange for some keywords. But what exactly does this mean? Well, essentially, this is a password system. Talk to the postmaster Waddle Dee, give him the password, and you'll receive an item. It's like the password system used in Super Kirby Clash, or even some of the mystery gift codes of the Pokemon titles. Another 50 Waddle Dees are needed to build Kirby's house. Yeah, this nice igloo-looking house is Kirby's. The question is if both this and the post office can be built once 50 Waddle Dees have been rescued, or if each one individually requires 50 of them. Anyway, regardless of the answer to that, we know from the Japanese website that this is indeed Kirby's house, and that you can sleep here to fully restore Kirby's health. One of the screenshots even gives us a nice look inside, with Kirby sitting on a plush chair next to an open book. There's an unlit fireplace in the back, and the bed is placed next to the window, with a nice star pillow. We're not sure what's on the book next to Kirby, or if we can even do anything here other than rest, but boy does it look cozy in here. This almost looks like it'd be a great place for the main menu, but since we know this area isn't unlocked until 50 Waddle Dees have been rescued, it most likely isn't that. Outside of Kirby's house, we can see Dedede sitting in one of the chairs up here too. Perhaps when not playing in co-op, he could be found chilling in town as well. Next up, we get a good look at the front of the Colosseum up in the second level. You can't just walk in and challenge opponents though, given the fact that the entrance is closed off. This small stand on the left appears to be where sign-ups happen. We can even see a small sign on the left for a tourney bracket. This Waddle Dee wears glasses, a bow tie, and has a mic next to him. Notably, this Colosseum actually gets built up. If we take a look at the screenshot from the Japanese website, the entrance is much more flashy, with a couple of pillars. Meta Knight is even standing on top of the one on the right. The emblem above the door has 3 stars here, but in the trailer, it only has 1. More than likely, it'll get built up and more difficult as Kirby completes different challenges here, and more in the story mode. According to the website, this Colosseum is where boss refights can happen, including a battle with Meta Knight. So, as we theorized in our previous analysis, this is the Forgotten Land's answer to the arena and various other Kirby games. Kirby could take on past foes here, and then more, perhaps even ending with some sort of special secret boss, as per usual. There's also this pink stand off to the right, which looks kinda carnival-like, but unfortunately, we don't get a great idea what happens here. Or do we? One of the screenshots of the Japanese website shows off this tilting puzzle game, and this may just be where it takes place. Kirby starts off in the space in the lower right, and must make it to the star in the center without falling. It's good to see that there's even more minigames than we previously knew about. Maybe there'll be even more. Just to the right of this stand, we've learned that this building with the flower logo is a pharmacy. Kirby can come here to buy defense, attack, and speed boosts. Up to 5 can be stacked, and they last for 200 seconds. Well, the attack boost does at least. Whatever you choose to boost for a short time, these are sure to be helpful items to hold on to, though they're definitely a bit pricey. 150 point stars for attack and speed boosts, but 300 for the defense boost. The Japanese website gives us a great aerial view of Waddle Dee Town, and there's even more to look at. We can see the fishing pond is just next to Kirby's house, and we even get some proof that it is indeed a minigame from a screenshot. Kirby has to press X to reel in whatever he's caught, while over on the right, Dedede has already pulled up a massive blipper. Maybe these can reward Kirby with point stars or even more? Either way, between the fishing minigame, restaurant minigame, and whatever this small marble minigame ends up being, there's some fun options here. There's one area of Waddle Dee Town we haven't talked about yet, and that's Waddle Dee's weapon shop, which we previously theorized was a sort of hat shop, closest to the Warp Star. When Kirby first walks in, we see Cutter and Fire off to the left, so more than likely, these are the first 2 copy abilities obtained, or among them at least. Ahead of Kirby, this Waddle Dee sits in front of his workshop, waiting to work on extra ability upgrades. In order to upgrade copy abilities, you need to find and bring blueprints to this Waddle Dee. These blueprints can be found in the world as extra collectibles. After finding them, you can show them to this workshop Waddle Dee, and he gets excited to craft it. Once you have a blueprint, you can upgrade the ability. In the trailer, we see Cutter get upgraded to Chakram Cutter. The blue star up here next to the default Cutter shows that it's currently equipped. Chakram Cutter has 1 power, but 3.5 rapid fire, so it's a pretty fast ability, and we'll see it in action soon enough. In order to upgrade abilities, there's a fee of point stars and these rainbow stars too. These rainbow stars appear to be the colorful shards collected in different levels, that we've seen a few times now. The icon looks to be made up of 2 red, 1 yellow, 1 orange, since it's half red and half yellow, and 1 green, but realistically they may not actually be this colorful. We've seen Kirby collect multiple green shards in the same level before, and in one of the screenshots set in World 2, we can see 4 green shards on screen. maybe these aren't as uncommon as we thought, because this seems a little excessive. Anyway, now we know these shards make up stars that are used for currency when evolving copy abilities. When you choose to evolve an ability, Waddle puts his goggles on and gets to work back in his workshop. Now, let's pause here and take a look at everything he has back here. Of course, there's a bunch of tools hanging up near his desk, including wrenches, saws, and more. In the upper left, there's a bunch of pinned documents and designs. We can see designs for Kirby's sword with a breakdown of its different components. There's also a small drawing on the same page that appears to be a star plus an apple. Just below this page is a sketch of Popstar, the planet Kirby and all the others come from. There's some sort of charts and diagrams to the side as well, perhaps detailing readings from their home. To the upper right, there's these explosive shapes, or perhaps stars. There's a few of them, and even more charts and readings just below. They kinda seem similar to the dimensional rifts that have been opening up, not only here in this game, but in several recent Kirby titles. Below this page, and also on the table, is a diagram of a planet, and how some other objects revolve around it. It's all pretty interesting, and definitely more complex than simply working on crafting new abilities for Kirby. Is this Waddle studying this strange new world they're in, comparing the readings from their homeworld, this new one they found themselves in, and the dimensional rifts that keep appearing? It's incredibly fascinating, and a fun attention to detail. There's also this small page, but it's hard to see exactly what's on it. It has a sort of gemstone shape, almost like the Chaos Emeralds from Sonic, in the middle of some kind of box. Anyway, after Waddle finishes his work, Kirby gets his new ability. We can see an arrow next to Fire Kirby as well, so Kirby likely has the blueprint and materials to upgrade this as well. Since we see Kirby actually obtain the ability, this weapon shop can likely give copy abilities to Kirby before he sets out on his adventure, hence its close proximity to the Warp Star out of town. Plus, we have a screenshot of Crash Kirby in town, and this is probably the only way to attain the abilities here. Now, let's actually talk about these upgraded copy abilities. We first get a good look at Chakram Cutter, which has less power but much faster attacks than normal Cutter. Kirby demonstrates the default Cutter against this new enemy in the amusement park. This isn't the Mr. Frosty that we know from past Kirby games. According to a screenshot, this is Wild Frosty. Anyway, while Cutter normally throws out one blade, Chakram sends out multiple, and definitely looks to be good against multiple enemies, even if it isn't very powerful. We can see another upgrade to Cutter Kirby on the Japanese website, which appears to be made out of a saw blade. This one looks pretty powerful, so perhaps it's slower yet deals more damage. Next up, we see Fire Kirby, demonstrating the range of the default flamethrower and the volcanic projectiles of Volcano Fire. This is in an area of the snowy world we've already seen. Volcano Fire shoots out flaming rocks ahead of Kirby, and reminds me a bit of the Volcano Kirby ability from Kirby 64. If we skip ahead a little, we can learn even more about these different fire abilities. From the menu in Waddle weapon shop, default Fire Kirby has 1.5 power and 1.5 rapid fire, so it's pretty standard as a whole. Volcano Fire has 2.5 power and 1.5 rapid fire, with lava-based attacks. I love how much personality is in the description, opening with boom and whoosh. Additionally, we have Dragon Fire, which has 3.5 power and 2.5 rapid fire. Dragon Fire is what's currently set, meaning whenever Kirby obtains the fire copy ability, this is the form it'll take. Its design reminds me of Landia, specifically EX Landia. Anyway, we even get to see it in action in the Wastelands, specifically the dried up sea, allowing Kirby to move while spewing out a hot purple stream of flames. He can also fly forward with dragon-like wings, very similar to the Fire Phoenix from Kirby 64. But before we move on, let's take a moment to talk about this area. While we don't see a ton of it in the first clip, the second clip gives us a lot more to work with. There's tons of dried up coral, large metal boxes, and a beach ball for some reason. Also, these really large bones? Hopefully we don't need to worry about whatever those used to be. Anyway, we can see some point stars around, and pools of poison as well. Maybe Kirby can obtain the water balloon mouth somewhere nearby. Just before the scene fades away, we can see a ladder in the back to climb up some of these metal boxes, just past these falling towers. Moving back to the copy abilities, the next one we see is Clutter Needle, an upgrade of Needle Kirby. This one sticks a ton of pointy objects onto Kirby, and they launch out for him as damaging projectiles. This appears to be just ahead of an area we've seen in World 2, going off of the Big Shotzo and the Gordo. We can see some spots to dig, and in the upper left, we can see the Scissor-Lift used earlier in the trailer. The Japanese website gives us a better look at this copy ability, showing that it can pick up additional objects and enemies along the way, making for an even bigger burst of damage afterwards with all the debris. We also get to see a screenshot of another upgrade to Needle Kirby, involving crystals. We're not sure how different this one will work compared to Needle or Clutter, but it's sure to be interesting. Next up is Gigant Sword Kirby, the upgrade to Sword Kirby. This ability gives Kirby a massive sword, and an outfit themed to Gigant Edge, a recurring Kirby mini-boss. This large sword is clearly pretty powerful, and it even comes with a shield for blocking attacks. Next up is Noble Ranger, which gives Kirby a second gun and lets him rapid-fire shots at his enemies. This appears to be in the natural planes, specifically inside a building. This hole in the wall is curiously cone-shaped. Was it made by Conemouth Kirby, or is it for him to fit inside? Anyway, the Japanese website teaches us more about the Ranger ability in general. We can see Kirby rapidly firing at enemies as Noble Ranger in the snowy region, giving us an earlier look at the same level we keep seeing. He also targets an enemy with a reticle, which we theorized Ranger could do in our previous analysis. He performs a dodge around a snowball, giving him quick reflexes to strike with another attack. But let's take a step back here for a moment to look at the default Ranger Kirby. We get a good look at the targeting and reticle system we mentioned earlier in our previous analysis, and it looks pretty helpful for attacking aerial enemies. We also see him perform a dodge, followed by a quick attack. While we only see this performed by Ranger Kirby, it looks a lot like the backflip Kirby does in the first trailer. Maybe Kirby has a dodge mechanic in this game, where if he narrowly avoids an attack, he can follow up with a quick counter of his own, not unlike the Flurry Rush mechanic of Breath of the Wild, for example. The next ability we see is Frosty Ice Kirby, giving Kirby an outfit themed to the Wild Frosty mini-boss. He can create little snowmen to act as a barrier, or run into them to send them forward as an offensive attack. Enemies can also be frozen, and sent on their merry way as well. The Toy Hammer is next, giving Kirby a squeaky hammer to attack his foes in quick succession with. It appears to be a faster hammer, likely dealing less damage. We see it mostly used in the amusement park area. We can see a breakaway ground in the trailer as well, just behind Kirby on the right. These would collapse as soon as Kirby steps on them. That's all the copy abilities we see in the trailer, but there's actually more here. The screenshots show off Chain Bomb Kirby, letting Kirby set down multiple bombs before they explode together in a larger area of effect. These are likely good for a wide area of damage. One of these we see in an ice area against several hammer enemies, but we'll come back to the screenshot. The other appears to be in the amusement park, and appears to be at the end of a racetrack. Carmouth Kirby can likely be used here, as we even see another racetrack-like section in the trailer. The Japanese website shows off the chain bombs in action, with a reticle for where it'll be thrown, as well as giving us an idea of how far they'll roll. Next up, a single screenshot shows Kirby with some sort of pencil ability. Thankfully, the Japanese website shows that it's an upgrade of Drill Kirby. Kirby's hat takes the form of a pencil sharpener, which can fire out pencils as a projectile attack. I gotta say, this one looks pretty fun. I'm a big fan of this one. Finally, the last copy ability upgrade we see is for Tornado Kirby, and is some sort of swan. We can see it in action in this area we originally saw Tornado used in. It appears to be themed to this swan mini-boss enemy we see in the screenshot. Anyway, according to the clip on the Japanese website, this can bring enemies in for a wide attack and toss them around with the wind. The various themes for these different copy ability upgrades look pretty fun, and I'm excited to see what else is in store. What could the upgrades for Sleep or even Crash be? Since a few of them seem to be tied to specific mini-bosses, perhaps we get those blueprints from defeating those bosses? Or maybe in the levels those mini-bosses appear in? Either way, there's sure to be a lot, perhaps 2 upgrades for each ability. Before we continue with the trailer, let's come back to the Chain Bomb Kirby versus the Hammer enemies real quick. While this is in the ice area, that's not the main detail here. See this blue box encasing the area? Well, we can actually see that in a few different screenshots here. It appears to be a way to close off the space for a mini-boss battle, or at least a forced battle. This makes sense, since normally Kirby just disables the ability for the screen to scroll, but you can't really do that in a 3D space. So what do you do then? You just close off the area, block it off, and don't let the player advance, or leave. And there you go. Moving back to the trailer, we get a cutscene of enemies running out of a building. It's in an industrial area, but one we haven't seen before. Just before the trailer cuts away, we can see a hint of lava. There's a screenshot in a similar location, giving us another view of this area, showing even more of this factory-like industrial location. There's lava below, as well as a wooden-based enemy camp nearby. This is likely the last world in the game, or at least the furthest one into the game we've seen thus far. The next shot of the trailer gives us another look at the opening cutscene, Kirby flying to the land in the middle of the storm, with the big dimensional rift in the sky. Skipping ahead a little, we can see Kirby and Bandanity tumbling through the rift, falling between the spaces. We can likely piece together a good amount of this cutscene now. between what we have here and from the previous trailer. Kirby has a normal day in Dreamland, before getting on a warp star to fly around. The Waddle Dees begin to get captured. So Kirby flies into the storm to investigate, but it becomes too much and overpowers him, as he and Dedede end up caught in the rift, and then eventually Kirby wakes up on the beach. Anyway, moving on to the trailer, we get a look at Noble Ranger Kirby battling another boss of the Beast Pack. Screenshots show she's Lethal Leopard Clawroline. The battlefield seems to be a rundown circus tent, so she's likely the main boss of the amusement park area. She strikes at Kirby with long claws, which are tipped purple. While I'm pretty sure they're meant to represent painted nails, what if they inflict a poison status? Anyway, the next clip shows another boss, the armadillo teased in the last trailer. Screenshots name him the armor-plated prancer, Sillydillo. We can see that as it runs around, it holds a cage, which it can use in attacks to trap Kirby inside. If we take a closer look at the surrounding area, we can see that this is where the stuffed Elfilin scene from the previous trailer happens. Sillydillo seems to be a bit of a hoarder, and pretty crafty at that too. One of his attacks in a screenshot shows a crafted version of himself being sent out against Kirby. So, since he's pretty crafty, perhaps early in this level, or even the world as a whole, he kidnaps Elfilin. And when Kirby comes to the rescue, Kirby comes face to face with a fake, with Sillydillo coming in for the ambush. This looks like it'll be a pretty fun boss battle, honestly. The question is, what world is it in? Well, if we also use the information we got from the previous trailer and analysis, Gorimondo is the boss of World 1, Tropic Woods is the boss of World 2, Clawroline is the boss of the amusement park world, and perhaps Sillydillo is the boss of the Wastelands. There's a ton of sand here, and this den looks like it's underground, perhaps even in the dried up ocean. That's most of the worlds we know of, except the snowy region and the new lava industrial one. Anyway, the next clip may clue us in on another one. We get this dramatic view of some enemies, and King Dedede? He looks corrupted. Is this really Dedede? If we take a closer look at him, he's wearing a leopard print coat instead of his usual red. There's some sort of feathers in addition to the puffy lining of his coat. Plus, the top of his hat is much larger than usual. Though the hammer looks the same, and we can see he's still blue. Now, hear me out here. Since the dimensional rifts used in this game are pretty similar to the ones commonly used in Kirby titles over the past decade, what if they're in a parallel world? The one we've been teased about for years. We've seen parallel characters over the years after all, even a parallel Susie from Planet Robobot. So what if this is a parallel King Dedede, instead of the one we all know and love? One that's a bit more wild, and a potential leader or key member of the Beast Pack. Whoever this ends up being, it's clear they're important. If we look at the surrounding area, it's some sort of ruined castle. There's icicles, so it might be the snowy region, perhaps painting this Dedede as the boss of this world. Anyway, there's also a bunch of empty cages in the background. Is he behind all the Waddle Dees being captured? Continuing on in the trailer, we get a clip of Elfilin being drowned in some sort of green goo. It's in some sort of building hallway, or maybe even a subway. Could this be when Sillydillo captures Elfilin? Well, we don't see very much, so it's hard to say really. So, moving on past this, and this next tranquil clip of the fox enemies running around in World 1, we're brought to Kirby on some sort of rooftop. Where's Elfilin here? It appears to be the top of some high-rise tower. There's plenty of buildings all around too, appearing slightly futuristic, though almost rather industrial. Is this the same lava-filled industrial area we saw before? It's certainly dark enough in the sky, and Kirby is high enough up that we wouldn't necessarily see the lava casting light from down below. Kirby's looking up at something, so there's something above him in the sky. It could be the boss of the area, or some sort of story cutscene perhaps. The trailer closes with Car-Mouth Kirby driving down a long road, specifically a long bridge. This could be a cutscene in the actual game, perhaps from the very beginning after Kirby first arrives in this world and obtains the Car-Mouth ability. But it's a fun way to end the trailer. Okay, we're just about done here, but there's actually one last detail to cover real quick. Amiibo. The Japanese website indicates that any of the Kirby series amiibo, and QB from Box Boy, will work to give items. While it would be fun for these to give something special, I have a feeling it may simply be some point stars or heal items, rather than anything big. Whew. And with that, that'll wrap up this analysis on Kirby in the Forgotten Land. We learned a lot more about this game from the recent Nintendo Direct, between the Mouthful mode, copy ability upgrades, and new details on Waddle D-Town, not to mention the additional details on bosses and the levels themselves. It's clear that there's a lot to this new Kirby game, and we can't wait to play it soon. But what do you guys think of this latest Kirby trailer? Do you have a favorite Mouthful mode ability or copy ability upgrade from what we've seen so far? Let us know your thoughts down below, and be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for plenty more on Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and other things gaming as well. We've had a ton of coverage on the recent Nintendo Direct, so if you haven't seen any of those yet, make sure to check them out. Until next time, farewell everyone.